Welcome to Skol Sessions, the Viking Athletics podcast where strength meets smarts. I am your host, Erik Castiglione, owner and head coach of Viking Athletics, and I am once again joined by Coach Nivi Carbonell, who is the head of our Viking Performance program, which is more or less our competitors program. Call it people that want a little something extra in addition to the CrossFit class. How we doing, Nivi?
Yeah, good. Another day in the life, as always.
And today is, the 18th, March 18th, which means that later on this evening, the 2024 CrossFit Games Open officially draws to a close. As far as we are concerned, unless we have any stragglers that are coming in to do the last ditch attempt at 24.3, I think we're done with it in our gym. We programmed the WOD last Friday, 24.3, had a pretty decent turnout that day. I don't think I've seen anybody stop in all weekend to do it. Kind of sucks to do it by yourself with that many thrusters.
No. I'm trying to keep count the entire time?
Yeah, so no fault there. We'll see what happens. We'll have our final scores updated tomorrow, and we will be releasing the winner of our Intramural Open. So our topic for today is the 2024 both the CrossFit Games Open and the CrossFit Relentless Intramural Open. We're going to get into workout review, which I'm sure you can find anywhere and everywhere else you decide to look, but we can give our unique take on it based on our membership and delve into the Intramural Open a little bit more, which thank you for really stepping up this year. You were a big help. You came up with the Miami Vice theme, the week-to-week theme, designed our shirts. In years past, well, I think we were helped along this year by the fact that we had 46, somewhere around 46 to 50 participants each week. I can say the data entry and score manipulation from week to week has always been a royal pain in my ass.
Yeah.
It was a lot worse when we had 160 people participating, when we forced everybody in the gym to do it.
Yeah.
So we have pared that down to the people that want to do it, and it's definitely streamlined the process. But I think there was definitely some FOMO from some people from other programs. One of our weightlifters showed up one Friday and opted to do the workout, even though she was not participating in the Intramural Open, which was cool to see. So definitely a great turnout from a community standpoint. I wrote a post Friday night thanking everyone. Pre-pandemic, we used to have massive parties. I always described 5 weeks as week one, everybody's kind of timid, a little bit of a turnout. They're not sure what to expect.
Yeah.
Week two blew up a little bit.
Yeah.
Week three was huge because everybody wanted to outdo week two. Week four, people are like, oh crap, we're still doing this thing. And they're just tired. And then week five was like, thank God it's over.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that it's 3 weeks now. And that's kind of what we saw. Was week one was a little timid. Week two was awesomely huge. And then there were other events going on week three. We had a bunch of our powerlifters who had shown up to spectate in previous weeks had a meet the following day. So no fault of theirs for staying in and worrying about making weight and not indulging the night before. Can't blame them for that. But we still had a great turnout, and I am reminded of the days pre-pandemic. So I was very, very thrilled to see that. And as I said in that post, we couldn't have done it without our staff and our awesome team captains. So I'm thrilled from that standpoint. What were your overall impressions regarding the Intramural Open?
So it's funny kind of how I measure it, because we'll get into the nitty-gritty for sure in terms of like programming and all that things. Obviously, I'm not like the greatest thing in the world in terms of like programming, but in essence, I like to kind of judge how successful it was just based off like the community itself. So I think let's see, last year was my first Open with you guys, and kind of seeing the stark difference between last year and this year is like I'm reminded why we do things like this, and it's the turnout has like intensified. So I find it a success for sure, just because it touched more people. A lot of people kind of went outside their comfort zone.
Definitely.
It was definitely a lot more accessible without floor plans and everything like that, which I'm sure we'll get into. But
For sure.
But the definite like fun factor is back.
Oh,
I feel like by comparison to last year.
absolutely. I think we had a lot more build up this year. I don't recall. I think I was off to a late start last year. I think I mentioned it once in January and then didn't really start planning it until February. And it was a little earlier last year. It was the last week of February and the first 2 weeks of March. And I remember that because where we are now, people are running today for the first time outside in a very long time. I tried to tell people as I was coaching yesterday, hey, we're on to Murph Prep now. We had 12 weeks to Murph Prep last year. This year it's down to 10. So definitely a little bit of a later season. It allowed for more of a build-up. Obviously, playing off of the fun tension between the captains that already existed. That was an awesome call. That definitely led to
shenanigans.
More shenanigans, more of a build-up. Not discounting last year. Last year there was definitely some of that, but I've had some members come back that were with us in 2016 before we ever started the Intramural Open. My wife included. She's now doing powerlifting, and she'll be there at night, Friday night lights, and I don't recognize anybody. And she's like, so there's been a fair amount of turnover since the previous days. So the people that understood what the Intramural Open was, it's new to them as well. So definitely more promotion this year than we had last year. And again, that's on me. And that's why I'm thankful that we had you stepping up to help out and, pushing the shirts. We were also working with Sherpa Works last year. And let's just say we didn't get to design the shirts. We had predetermined designs. We just had to figure out the color, but it was a scramble to, I had the captains each get a head count from their team, and it was a scramble to do that because we were already behind the 8 ball.
This year was definitely a little bit easier for sure. In terms of planning too, just because overall the shirt thing, we kind of had
already had a design,
we had the design set. It's just who was going to do it, and then lo and behold, just it just so happened that
Unity fell in with us.
It's we sent you some samples and stuff. It's
that definitely helped, and it worked out. But no, it was a fantastic turnout. Like you said, from the fun standpoint, I agree with you. That's a great metric, and it was definitely a huge success. To your earlier point as well, watching people step out of their comfort zones. Wanted to give another shout out to Coach Mo for that as well, because she was on people who were thinking of sandbagging things. I have that in as a scoring metric. If you sandbag a workout to win your division, you lose 25 points. And it turned into more let's push people. This is the one time a year where you can, like you said, really get outside your comfort zone and try things that you've never tried before. We had people hit heavier weights than they've ever used. That happens every year. I don't think we had any first pull-ups. I haven't checked the scorecards for it, but usually if it's people's first time doing a chest-to-bar workout, they might get their first chest-to-bars. I'm not surprised nobody got their first bar muscle up this year, mid-wad. We had Matt managed to get his first one right before the workout.
Of course.
But it's a different story trying to do bar muscle ups after 50 chest-to-bar pull-ups. So in that sense, I'm not surprised. When in open WODs of the past, you would see people get it because it was a ton of non-interfering movements beforehand. This workout specifically did not allow for that. There was nothing but interference there.
It's just not going to let you get away with a sneaky one, even if you could try to get one. And it made sure that if you're going to attempt it, you needed to either rest a little bit longer than you probably wanted to, especially given what you did in the first half, right? Because a lot of people wanted to blitz that first portion of that last workout and then get to the rest, and then the rest doesn't do you any good because
1
you're
minute's
too busy.
not enough.
You're like sucking wind as you kind of like, all right, I got to gather myself. Then I have to do heavy thrusters and then try to get back to the pull-up bar and hope to God that I can get up there. But I think, yeah, we were talking about this earlier about like that level of intensity that the Open kind of brings. And I think I've talked about this in a class previously. I think probably on Sunday, where we were talking about and discussing like the term intensity and kind of just like what makes the Open so special. It's just throughout the year, no matter what's programmed, we tend to do that thing of like, okay, you know, I just came to class after work, or I'm going in before work. I don't want to hit it too crazy and, you know, be spent the entire rest of the day, things of that sort. But then the Open comes around, Friday Night Lights happens, and everyone's like, okay, I got to watch the elites do it, and I have an idea. The coaches kind of like, I posted those videos for the first 2 workouts, and I left the last one alone because it's like, this one's pretty straightforward. It's like, it's either you got it or you don't kind of thing. And if you need to substitute anything, do so. But it's the idea of like, there's an intended amount of intensity, and everyone was willing to kind of go there in order to do that because this is their test of fitness. And then when you have people that maybe struggle with a movement, like for the second one, the double unders, and I think a lot of people struggled on that because they're not used to holding a certain amount of intensity for like a 20-minute workout like that, where you're kind of actually trying to be continuously moving, maybe taking a breath or two between stations, and then not practicing it enough during the rest of the year.
We certainly did some of those. I was anticipating some longer time domains, so we certainly ramped up that particular time domain leading into the Open. But that's a great segue into, you know, we talk about intensity. What does that mean? And a test of fitness. It's a nice segue into what is the point of the Open worldwide. So we can certainly delve into the programming a little bit, but as much as people like to bitch about it, and I already told you I had mixed feelings about this one, what is the Open trying to accomplish? It's a lot of things that are in conflict with one another, and it makes it, you know, I don't envy the job that Castro and Boz have creating the workouts for this.
Not even close.
Because on the one hand, yeah, we want to test our fitness, and CrossFit has a very specific definition of fitness, improved work capacity across broad time and modal domains. You can use the 10 physical skills model as well: accuracy, agility, balance, coordination, cardiorespiratory endurance, flexibility, mobility, muscular strength, muscular stamina, speed, and power. Those are the 10. So we're trying to test all those things. And if you view the WODs through that framework, which I plan to do, you can kind of see where they were going with it. But then again, it's a worldwide competition. They're trying to screen people out to make it to the next level. Yeah. So on the one hand, they want it to be accessible to increase participation. So, you know, the addition of the scaled and the foundations versions of the workouts obviously allows people to do that. But at the same time, they're trying to find the people that can move to the next level, because ultimately you're trying to get to the CrossFit Games, and that's the best of the best.
Yeah.
So when we talk about classic CrossFit, for those that haven't taken the level 1, there's a couple things that we look at. And I say that this Open was classic CrossFit in both the good and bad senses of that. And I've launched into this from a programming standpoint for, you know, in numerous other videos and podcasts. I think CrossFit gets a lot right. I do think they tend to focus on some details that are a little bit insignificant, and we'll talk to that when we get into the breakdown of each workout. But why don't we go workout by workout? So traditional CrossFit, they talk about using couplets and triplets, which is a very good thing, because the human body can only handle so many movement patterns in a session before you start to over fatigue, you get neurological fatigue, and you don't make any progress. So I think that is honestly one problem that we see with a lot of competitive approaches, is people are trying to do too much in a single session.
Yeah.
So if you ever look at what we do in a regular class, we have our main lift most days, And then the Metcon complements that movement pattern. It'll either be the same movement pattern or a complementary one. And the vast majority of what we're doing is couplets and triplets. And if we're doing any more than that, there's usually a cyclical movement like a row or a bike or something in that. And it's specifically for that reason.
Yeah.
So if we look at the first workout, it was a couplet. It was absolutely brutal. Very low skill, dumbbell snatches, very high intensity. So if you're talking from a classic CrossFit standpoint, dead on. There's no hiding in that. This is a pure test of your motor.
Oh, yeah.
And I hated the workout for me personally because I hate burpees. I'm sitting here at 230 pounds. And, my goal was to see how close to finishing I could get. I think I came within 6 reps. I was pretty damn close. But again, that's me being penalized for not training this type of modality and avoiding burpees most of the year. So people are like, oh, this is boring. It was like when in 2012, the 7 minutes of burpees. It's not sexy, but it's a damn good test of your work capacity and your mental toughness. So I had no problem with that one from a programming perspective. From a performance perspective, yeah, absolutely. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah. I think out of the 3, this was my favorite one. I think the first one was surprisingly, because
you're sick in the head, man.
It's like you said though. There's no place where you can hide.
Yeah.
And I think what really threw a wrench in everyone's plan was the fact that it was 21 on each arm. And then you realizing like, okay, I can keep this going, but then you realize like halfway through, like towards the back end of like those last 3 reps of 21, you're like, oh no, this is not good. And then the fatigues, the burning sensation in your shoulder from just swinging at basically almost like an American kettlebell swing almost.
That was a nice twist on it this year. Instead of, for those that may be listening, I don't know why you'd be listening if you don't know what the Open is, but hey, hopefully we're reaching some new audiences. The workout was 21 dumbbell snatches with one arm, 21 burpees, 21 dumbbell snatches with the other arm, 21 burpees. Repeat that sequence with the numbers of 15 and 9. So it wound up being, 180 reps total?
Yeah.
So according to CrossFit's standards of volume, anything under 100 is low volume, 100 to 200 is medium volume, 200 plus is high volume. And I've taken issue with that in the past because I think movement selection really needs to play more of a role in that, which we'll talk about when we get to the second workout. But it was considered a medium volume.
Yeah.
If we look at the time domain, there was a 15-minute cap. And I think the average worldwide was like 12 and a half minutes for people finishing. So for most people, this would be a medium time domain workout in the 12 to 15 minute range. For the real fire breathers out there, I think we had 2 people I saw in the gym do it in under 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Short time domain. And for the pros, it was definitely a short time domain workout.
Yeah. Sub 8 across the board, I think.
Yeah.
For top 100. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Blisteringly fast. So, huge work capacity, great intensity. Like you said, nowhere to hide. And I've hosted competitions in the past where we throw in these low skill movements. And this was when we would get the regionals competitors who had never made it to the games, decided to be assholes about it. And they're like, oh, our problem is that you're having us do burpees and kettlebell swings when you've got advanced level athletes. And I'm like, you want to do muscle ups? Make it to the final WOD.
Yeah.
Like the way we did community events, we always used to kind of level it up, and you had to make it to the final WOD where all the high skill stuff was. We usually had a test of strength, a test of pure work capacity, something that was more of a test of strategy. Yeah. And then you could make it to the final WOD and do that. And we did have one team that came from the games, and they were totally chill. And they were like, no, this was great, man. And it's like, the whole point is there's no skill to save you. Yeah. There's, like you said, nowhere to hide.
I think it's funny because it's a common sentiment, especially those people that are in like the higher ends of like the leaderboard kind of thing, where a lot of them find that this Open was boring. It's like, yeah, because I think a lot of them are stuck in that mentality of what the Open was. It was at one point a direct qualifier to the games.
Right.
It's not that anymore. You used to go straight to regionals from it for a good amount of time. It's not that anymore. And I think there's a lot of people holding on to that feeling of like, oh, but you know, we used to remember the good old days. I know, like, don't get me wrong, I love like the old school kind of feel of certain things, but we need to evolve with the times. And I think they're trying to strike that balance, like you stated earlier. And it's very hard. You're not going to make everyone happy for sure. Definitely not.
I thought they did strike a good balance for the most part, and the fact that it's down to 3 weeks makes it that much harder as well. When you have 5 weeks, you got a hell of a lot more time to play with, and you can. I mean, 2012 again, we started out with 7 minutes of burpees, and then there was no scaled division, so you had the type of workout where you needed to separate people, and it became the classic Karen followed by double unders followed by muscle ups. There was very clearly delineations based on level of skill.
Yeah.
With the scaled divisions now, I don't think they really have to do that.
And even then, like, because I was thinking about this the other day too, because when it comes to like even how CrossFit has done it, where you have prescribed, you have RX, you have scaled, you have foundations, there's still a lot of people that don't even fall even between. They fall very much in between those two different levels. So it's even gotten to a point, and it was something that I was kind of conscious of when I was thinking about planning this out for the Open, and and kind of how to make the teams and how to make this more fun for people. And I think the biggest conclusion I came for myself personally was, yes, they give us all these scales and things like that, but that doesn't necessarily mean we don't do our job as a coach, so to speak. And what I mean is like, unless I'm not going to hound someone to do either RX or scaled or foundation, for the simple fact that unless you are actually officially signed up and your name is going to appear on a worldwide leaderboard, then yes, I'm going to make you choose because you signed up, you paid $20, you're going to do it. However, if someone's just coming in, hey, I want to do this for fun and just be a part of it and do a workout.
So we treat it like a normal workout and scale certain aspects of it.
I'm still going to make it so as a coach, like, hey, I may have the person that, I can deadlift 185 easy, but I suck at double unders because it's been 6 years and I haven't worked on them, and I'll get to it when I get to it, or no one can solve my problem for me. Gee, who does that sound like? Hint, hint. Let's see if he actually listens. Things like that, like we don't take the time. Just because you don't take the time to do something doesn't mean you should be absolutely brutally punished for it, right? We're still going to scale accordingly, and I know we have a lot of people that are in between where like, hey, RX may be too much for them, but then scale is too
easy,
easy, and it's like they fall in between. So what do we do for those people? What do we do when we have someone that's injured?
Yeah,
and things like that. So I think that's where my head was at, and I said, and I'm kind of on the mindset of like, if I make it as accessible as humanly possible, yes, they've given me the blueprint, and like, this is our workout.
Yeah.
Unless they're officially signed up, though, I'm not going to force them into one of those 3 pegs.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make it work for them, but I'm going to get the level of intensity that I want out of them.
As we should.
Yeah.
But to your point, unless they're signed up, there is kind of a drawback there. So I'm going to use Katie Carey as an example because and we might as well move on to WOD 2, which was a 20-minute AMRAP of 300-meter row, 10 deadlifts. Prescribed was 185, 125, and then 50 double unders. And it was 50 singles if you were scaling. So for someone that has a back injury, great modifications. You had them do trap bar deadlifts and bike, which based on CrossFit HQ scalings, that would be foundations, but the weight largely then becomes irrelevant, and we can do that. But that would technically be in a regular class a scaled workout. But now we have to call it foundations. So by virtue of signing up, unfortunately, she is pigeonholed into.
Yeah. But she didn't sign up for the Worldwide Open.
Yeah, she did.
She did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been validating her score every week.
There you go.
And so like her scorecard, her judge wrote scaled, but she did correctly say foundations online. So it's one of those things. I had to keep track of that, and scoring for the Intramural Open, I had to call that foundations as well. So this is where we like it when people don't have egos.
Oh yeah.
So I'm thankful that she was a good sport the whole way through.
No.
Because you see some people that are like, well, I did the weight RX, but, and then it's the same kind of thing. Well, if you're scaling one,
Yeah, and
why wouldn't you scale both?
But I mean, for like even for someone like her, she was a good sport about it because all she wanted to do at the end of the day, she was, I just want to get a workout in. It's like,
great.
Like I love the Open. Don't get she told me this. It's like she loves the Open and everything in between. But I'm also not going to try to murder myself in the process. Like no, I want you to function. I want you to go have fun during the weekends, which she has a lot of fun, obviously.
Yeah, she made some great Jello shots.
Oh yeah, and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it is still a workout for most people. And
yeah. And again, with the scaling options, this was totally accessible. Didn't require a whole lot of equipment. Again, no floor plan, which was nice.
Thank God.
The weight was light enough that a lot of people could go RX. So this was the problem that I had with it. Mm-hmm. If you're going to make the weight that light to try to make it more accessible, why pair it with a skill that makes it less accessible? To me, that was a mismatch. Should have been a heavier deadlift because theoretically a more skilled athlete would also be somewhat stronger. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily true. But as you're approaching the higher levels of fitness, typically, I mean, for a long time they did, what's the difference between a games athlete and a regionals athlete? The biggest difference was strength numbers. Mm-hmm. So there's something to that. I mean, again, that would have changed the stimulus of the workout and made the deadlifts more of a factor. But ultimately, what was the limiting factor of this workout? It was the double unders. This was, for the vast majority of people, this was a double under workout.
Yeah.
I had to laugh. I think it was WOD Prep. I don't remember which. Everybody and anybody puts out strategy videos for every single workout.
It's my favorite time of year. Like as soon as the workout comes out, you see 500 videos automatically appear on YouTube.
And one of them was saying use double unders as rest. And it's like, well, if you're a pro,
if you have them,
you have them and you can do them and you are perfectly relaxed during them and you don't tense up. Yes, you could use it as rest. For the vast majority of people, you tend to tense up, you squeeze hard, and even in our prep, I think I started programming progressively bigger sets. I think the highest I ever programmed was 35. I never put 50 in a WOD. I might have done 40. So we certainly didn't prep for sets of 50.
Yeah.
So that was high volume. When you look at the pros who have, like, it's a given they're going to get through 50 double unders unbroken, it came down to the row. That was the deciding factor. Yeah. My pace was 2 seconds faster. That's what adds up. For the vast majority of people in the gym, that is not the case. I think for most of our athletes, the deadlift was a non-factor. I had some people break it up based on grip. I know when I did it, I dropped every single rep from the top, and it was light enough for me that I didn't bother to roll it back towards my shins. If it was a little bit farther out in front, I just picked it up where it laid. I do actually row. That is some of the conditioning that I do on my own, so that was nice. Mm-hmm. I knew it was going to come down to the double unders, and my plan was 2 sets. I tripped up a hell of a lot more than that. I only had one round that was 2 sets. Most rounds were 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. But for once, I did manage to stay relaxed, and I got farther in this than I thought I might. But again, when we talk about testing fitness, I compare my work capacity as a strength athlete to, we're going to name drop again, Steve Todd's of the world, Jason Milcarrick's of the world, who are absolute workhorses in the gym. And their motors are significantly better than mine, and I wound up putting up a better score, which to me, is that really a test of fitness? No, it's a fact that I have one skill that I was a little better than them at, which in and of itself is not a bad thing, but to go from that workout into the third workout, which was also very much limited by skill, and we'll get into that in a little bit, that was my disappointment. Was, if you're going to do that for 1, sure, no problem. But if you're going to do that for 2, are we really testing work capacity at that point? Yeah. That was my main complaint with it. That, and there was no max effort strength, which is usually my one event win for the year. Of course. I'm so tired of that though. Well, if you had been following, I don't really follow the games anymore, but I know there was some drama going on and people were annoyed at the focus on Olympic lifting in the games, and they're like, this is not our sport. We're not Olympic lifting. That's part of it. If you really want to test work capacity, have us run a 5K and then do a one rep max snatch and see who can still hit these numbers, which fair point. And usually in the open, it would be a max effort lift after all that other stuff. But yeah, no event win for me this year.
Yeah, I think I'm in the camp of like I don't really enjoy single modality unless you have all three in some capacity. Like if you're gonna do that, like hey, all right, 2K row, all right, then go
And then do it.
max snatch, and then oh cool, unbroken set of like pull ups, go.
Yeah,
Things
no,
like that.
I have no problem with that. And again, when they did that last year with the max effort thruster, that was kind of a fourth workout. You know, they
And they made it
I
harder this
think-
year for themselves
oh yeah,
because there's only 3 tests. There's no doubling up. Everyone was predicting a double up. I think everyone was hoping for like the repeat of 21, 3, and 4.
that's what I thought. I thought we would see that. I posted that in the group. My prediction was increasingly difficult hanging movements, thrusters. I did not get the increasing weight in thrusters, but this is, usually it's one or the other. We get an increase in difficulty for the gymnastics movement, or we get a progressively heavier barbell. They did both, but they still kept it as couplets.
Yeah.
So
Are you surprised no wall balls?
yeah, I'm actually surprised no wall balls, no toast bar.
Yeah.
I think that was the first year they've never had they didn't have toast bar. I think they've had it every single year. There was a list of movements that have always made an appearance.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time they didn't.
And especially when it comes to like, and I think that's why I was kind of hanging on to maybe a chipper for the last one, just because like there's a lot of movements where we have like those aha moments for some members, like, oh, I got my first toes bar
Right.
strung. And I was like, okay, you have a bunch of them still left on the table. Are you going to put them all together or no?
Yeah. So finishing up with 2, number 2 was a triplet, and it was 20 minutes. So classic CrossFit definitions: we've got a triplet, we've got a long time domain because it's longer than 17 minutes, and a very high volume workout because one round is 80 reps and people are easily getting upwards of 3 rounds.
Yeah.
So you're well over 200 reps. And again, for double unders, you can argue that's pretty high volume. It's a bigger jump. It's a little bit more power output than singles. If you're doing singles, I'm still of the camp that, doing 300 singles is really not that much impact for most people.
Yeah.
Which is why I push back against the arbitrary categorization of low, medium, and high volume. I'm like, the movement matters. But again, that's me being nitpicky. So we had a couplet that was, for most people, mid-time domain and medium volume. We had a long time domain, high volume triplet. I'm not mad that it wasn't a chipper, because the classic CrossFit says mostly stick to couplets and triplets, throw in the occasional chipper.
Yeah.
Fine. So they went back to a couplet. And the way this was set up, you could potentially argue that it really was 2 separate workouts because of the 1 minute break. And then you might run into the fact that, most people were probably going to get to the bar muscle ups. We're done in under 10 minutes. So that first piece is a short time domain.
Yeah.
And you're looking at 100 reps, so you're right on the cusp of low volume. But going back to the level 1 manual here, and I do give credit to CrossFit as they are one of the few programs out there that ever mentions rest to work intervals. I mean, they cover it very, very briefly in the energy systems development in the L1, and then they don't ever really do anything with it. And technically that is an aerobic workout because we're well above 2 minutes. In order to fully recover from an aerobic workout, you need a 1-to-1 work to rest interval.
Yeah.
Yesterday's sprints in our regular CrossFit classes were 1 to 2 minutes. They were heavily glycolytic, and you need about 5 times work to rest ratio, and I only gave people 3 minutes, so incomplete rest. We manipulate that to get what we want out of the workout. Point being that 1 minute rest, like you said, people were banking on that. It is nothing.
It means nothing. It means absolutely
You
nothing.
may get your breathing back under control a little bit, but your heart rate's probably not coming down.
Not even close. And your body's not nowhere near close to ready for that first thruster when it comes up.
So for the uninitiated, the workout was with a 15-minute time cap. You had 5 rounds of 10 thrusters at 95-65, 10 chest to bar pull-ups, 1 minute of rest, which you were forced to take, and then 5 rounds of 7 thrusters at 135-95, 7 bar muscle ups. So thrusters in both part, 1 movement there, and then there was, heavier weight and a progressively more difficult gymnastics movement.
Okay.
I'm sorry, this was less than 100 reps total, right? Because you had 35. No, I'm sorry, you had 70 in the second part. It's 170.
Yeah, it's 170.
So, yeah, again, for most people, I don't actually know anyone that finished it. I haven't looked. I would have to go look at the competitive gym in the area. I'm sure some of them managed to finish.
I think they were around, I was kind of looking at it the other day, 11, 12, around there.
Yeah, so still a mid-distant or a mid-time domain.
For the elites, yeah. No.
The elites is, again, another short time domain. So for the elites, you had short, long, short.
Yeah.
For the vast majority of people, you had mid, long, mid. So again, from that perspective, if we're talking classic CrossFit, I would have loved to see short, medium, long.
Yeah.
Hit all the time domains. That's, one gripe, me looking at through the classic CrossFit lens. And again, we said with only 3 workouts, you're severely limited in what you're able to include. That's why I thought a chipper was probably going to show up so they could include more movements. Having gone from a couplet to a triplet, you've only done 5, and then we really only got 3 here. So it was 8 movements. Personally, no, I'm not mad that there weren't wall balls. Fucking hate wall balls these days. Used to not mind them, but thrusters for me, I can go a hell of a lot slower on, and I don't need as much power. I can really disjoint it and turn it into a squat and press, and really lean back on strength to help limit my heart rate spikes. Less able to do that with wall balls. It's just a lot more awkward. You need a little bit of a bigger push in order to hit the target.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not mad at that. My thrusters went better than expected, actually. I was I managed my heart rate pretty damn well, and I finished right up where I wanted. So I was not mad at the last one personally, because I love when you have a strategy and it is right on point and you execute 100% on point. And I think I fell off maybe a couple seconds by the very end, but otherwise I ended up right where I wanted to.
Yeah, and I think for myself, what's funny about this is like, I got a couple questions about this the other day about like, oh, but last year I was, and this is where the percentile thing came into play just a little bit. It was that discussion. And I find myself in the same kind of category where it was like, oh, last year I was like, oh, hovering between 85, 80 all the time. Now I'm like, maybe 80, definitely above, like at 75, maybe even a little bit below 75%. And it's just like, the nature of last year's test by comparison to this year is vastly different.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Not to mention increased participation.
Yeah, and I think especially for that last workout, especially when it comes to this last workout, and obviously validation going on today as the last day, and people trying to do their redos and everything like that.
Yeah, the validation's due by Wednesday, so we won't know till the end of this week.
So the mere fact that they decided to put chest to bar in the first part, already a lot of people scaled that maybe would have RX'd it if it was just pull-ups into chest to bar.
Right.
So that means that the RX field is now
smaller.
And so my chances of being above that cut line for a quarterfinals is now like slim to none, maybe, because of the smaller group size and by comparison to everyone else that's in the RX category.
They only factor in the RX, they don't factor in everybody? Nope. Okay, I totally missed that.
Yeah,
I thought it was 25% worldwide.
Yeah, it's worldwide, but if you have someone that, I've done the first 2 RX, but if the last one, I don't have chest to bar, or I can't even get 1 bar muscle up, then they just plummet down to the bottom. Like, I'm fortunate enough, obviously, I have all these skills, but like if say someone had the first two RX. All right, we're all pretty competitive, but then this last one, I don't have any of those skills, and I have to scale it. Their score plummets all the way to almost to the bottom if someone does all 3 RX. So it was kind of like that thing of like, oh, but I was here last year. Why am I not here today? The test is completely different.
Yeah, and again, I mentioned the skills test earlier, that was part of my issue with the third one is, I manage my heart rate, but I do have the ability to do chest to bar and bar muscle ups, and that is a huge separator. And like I said, people that I would consider more fit than me in the gym, by virtue of the fact that I have bar muscle ups. I think I finished 4th in the gym overall in this one. Yaz, Matt, Lisak, you, me, I think.
I think so.
I would not ever put myself 4th in terms of fitness. I would put myself middle of the pack unless, again, like we're talking a max effort strength lift, then I'd throw myself up towards the top. Loved that heavy thruster last year. I think I was top 6th percentile in the world. Yeah.
I think
my one saving grace. Yeah. So again, it was more of a skills test. I mean, you make the argument that, we do need to test advanced gymnastics and high volume advanced gymnastics, but this early in the game, or do we want to save that later for quarterfinals and the games? I don't know.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of like points of contention for a lot of different people. But I think for me personally, like this year, I don't know what it was. It was funny. I was talking to Rachel about this. I don't know what happened in the second workout. It felt weird because, like, generally for someone like myself, deadlift is not that it's bad. It's just not the most friendly for like my back and things like that, right? So it's something that I've always kind of like kind of shy away, not necessarily shy away from, but I'm always very conscious about. But it feels like after that second workout, the first one was like just straight pain. It's just like, just go, and that's it. I think it was after the second workout, it felt like while by comparison, if you look at like my percentile and all that ranking and all that crap, by comparison to last year, it's down. I think I am far more fitter. I'm far fitter than when I was last year because I feel like in that second workout I found a different gear because I moved the entire time. I think my rest was very limited. Yeah. And I think it translated a little bit more into the third workout where I went in with the plan, and usually what ends up happening, like the first set, I'm like, no, I'm going to go. I might push it a little,
especially with hanging movements. I can attest to that watching you do.
And just trying to like
toes to bar too many in a row.
I might try to test it just a little bit. No, this one I stuck to a plan, and it just felt really good and stayed consistent. And, I made it as far as I thought I was going to make it. I wanted to make it to that second set of bar muscle ups and maybe finish it, but it's like, I don't think I would have enough time to get there. But something clicked. I feel like something clicked for me personally, and hopefully like someone is listening to this and then they're thinking back on those workouts and maybe something for them clicked, even if it's like the smallest thing possible. Like, oh, I can thruster that way because
heavy thrusters reps and all that.
Yeah,
I haven't looked at my rankings, but I'm sure they're up this year compared to last year. I'm a decade removed from my best competitive CrossFit days. Went into strongman and then weightlifting literally a decade ago. So different focus. 50 pounds heavier. I was thrilled. My bar muscle ups felt pretty damn good. Yeah. For whatever reason, my lats felt loose that day. Everything was flowing compared to 2 days earlier that week.
Yeah. Rachel was telling me like that my bar muscle ups looked as good as what they were like 2 years ago. Good. But I was like 15 pounds lighter, and I was going to head with Ben Norlin on them, just going rep for rep with him, and it's like, oh, I'm 15 pounds heavier now, and like, how's this gonna feel? I don't know how I feel, and it's like, oh, they look just as good, and they felt a little bit even more comfortable. Good. Even if I was just doing one at a time, and I had that one double, but that's about it.
I laughed at that. Yeah. I told you earlier, I was like, I talked trash to you that morning.
Yeah, I know.
And then you pulled a double, and that was the one rep to go ahead of me. I was like, I love it. That's awesome. You better not let me beat you. We've been prepping for this. I know. But I had the advantage of butterflying. So all my pull-ups were 6 and 4. Yeah. 6 and 4 thrusters, 6 and 4 butterfly, the whole way through. Yeah. And Catherine was curious because she did singles, and we chatted about it. Because I forget what workout we had her do. I think it was one of the retests.
Yeah.
And she did
had her
doubles.
try to do doubles and see how it felt by comparison.
The rest periods were longer. And so her overall time went down. And so she's like, oh, maybe I need to work on bigger sets of chest to bar. I was like, let's figure out butterfly first.
Yeah.
If you can butterfly 4 or 5, it makes your life so much easier. I had, I think it was 21-3. That was the front squats.
Yeah.
Yeah. My butterfly was not happening on that one. And I had to do, for the first time in probably, I think, so like the first time I ever encountered chest to bar, I could not do a regular kip. My story is interesting. My predecessor, when he owned the gym, really never demonstrated movements.
Yeah, no.
Ever.
I've heard.
So when he's trying to describe a kip, he's trying to get me to learn the 4 count, the 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're up. The only videos I had ever seen were the butterfly.
Yeah.
So I'd do like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then start flopping around trying to get a butterfly. And I had no concept of what a regular kip was supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And then we wound up doing a workout that was literally 100 pull-ups for time. And I figured it out of necessity. But I was not able to recreate it all the time. It wasn't until maybe 2 months later that it clicked. And then I finally saw some other members of the gym doing a regular kip, and I'm like, oh, that's what that's supposed to look like. And then when I moved down to Philly, the first team competition I did down there had chest to bar. And I could get the height, but I didn't know that your chest had to make contact with it.
Yeah.
So I went from being like the pull-up stud of the gym to being completely fucking useless and doing very few pull-ups because I couldn't actually make contact with it. 6 months later, by the time the Open rolled around, then I could do butterfly chest to bar. But I'm like, yeah, it's going from that to 21.3, whatever it was. I was like, fuck, I forgot how much just a regular kip sucks.
Oh, yeah. It's
so much more energy.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes.
Sometimes, because I feel like sometimes for some people, butterfly is like too much of a strain on their body.
They're tense all the time. They don't
just
relax.
Kind of roll into it. It's not a nice, steady flow for a lot of them, whereas their kip may be a little bit more efficient.
No, that's a fair point. For me, the regular kip feels awful compared to it. So I was, like I said, for me personally, I had fun this year.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the Open. From a programming perspective, I understand the challenges that they have. My one gripe would be the fact that you had 2 similar time domains. And when you have 3 WODs, and then the overemphasis, I would say, on skills. Do it in 1, not in 2.
Yeah.
Those would be my only critiques. But again, this is me being nitpicky. And like I said in the beginning, they have a lot of challenges to overcome with the goals of what this is.
Yeah.
And I do think they hit it out of the park with the accessibility piece.
Oh, yeah. I think they succeeded there, despite all the bitches, moans, and gripes that I'm sure the elite camps and stuff like that are going to do.
And what was the other critique was, 2 hinging patterns between 1 and 2. And I'm like, that's a non-issue.
That's dumb.
You should be hinging every week, if not twice a week. Maybe not in this amount of volume, but the weight was largely insignificant for most people. And the way we had it set up in the gym, where we're doing a WOD every Friday, I'm like, no, this is a non-issue. That's a BS complaint. There are valid complaints to be made. That would not be one of them.
Yeah, no. It's like, you'll be all right. It'll be fine.
Yeah. And, again, like I said, calling it boring, no. It's a gut check. You got to go.
Yeah. It's like, I get it, that they want certain things because, I want to test my fitness a little bit in terms of this. But then you have people like, what's his name, from Crash Crucible? Like, he did a series called Taylor versus the World, and he does...
You're more well-versed in that than I am.
So, like, watching him try to take on, like, games-level athletes, I think he for the first workout, he put up the world's second fastest time behind Colton Mearns.
Oh, wow.
And then he lost the other 2 to to Jason Hopper, who's very good on the rower, and then but still kept pace with him. I think they ended up tied. And then the last one, yeah, he got murdered by Mertens on the last one. But, it's funny because they say the Open doesn't matter for the elites, but then...
You can't blow it off.
Yeah, you can't.
You really can't.
Especially when it comes to top 100. It might affect who's going to the game, how many spots every section's going to get,
for sure.
and stuff like that.
I have not followed the rule book. I don't even know how the rankings work this year. I have been so far removed from following the sport of CrossFit that, all the rules, I'll read the rule book to see if it concerns anybody in our gym, and then I just don't give a shit beyond that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But you're right when it comes to, because you were saying they changed the strategy or the rules this year for who's out of what gym, and
it's basically like just residence and where you have a visa from and where have you physically been living for the most amount of time, and obviously you can do like country exceptions and stuff like that, but what I'm leaning towards is like they do something called the hunt method. So based on strength of field, so after you get past the Open, quarterfinals, and when you get ready for semifinals, they see, okay, each region starts off with a certain amount, and that's dictated by CrossFit, and then they're going to add to that amount. So for example, North America, East, West, and Europe each get 5. And then based on, okay, who's going to that semifinal? How many of them are in the top 100 athletes before the Open started by CrossFit's standard?
Yeah.
Will determine how many extra spots. So then maybe the East gets 13.
Okay.
And then maybe the West gets 11, and maybe Europe gets 13 as well.
And the Open can factor into that.
You would think that they would try to do that, but they do it in such a fashion that they just base it off of the first ranking before the Open even takes place.
Okay.
But then there's people playing around with the idea of, hey, what if you do that, use that as your starting point. How did they do in the Open? Factor that in. How did they do in quarterfinals? Factor that in. And then suddenly the window starts to get smaller and smaller, and especially because I think every semifinal is only getting 30 athletes at each one now. It's not 40 anymore.
Oh, shit.
So now the amount of spots to get to semifinals is smaller, much smaller. So,
well, I found it, I always thought the best of the best they would train through the Open for sure.
Yeah.
But how many years did Froning win the Open?
It's like, come on.
How many years did Fraser win the Open?
He won it by accident once.
Yeah. And Jeffrey Adler won last year.
Yeah.
And he won the games.
Yeah.
So, yeah, agree with you. You can't just blow it off for sure.
Yeah. And it's like, I get it. But at the end of the day, you wouldn't have this sport without the community, and you need to keep them involved.
Yeah, that's why I said it's a tough balance, and for the most part, I thought they did a good job this year.
Yeah.
And as much as people may have dreaded some of these workouts, we certainly had a great turnout as well.
Yeah.
I think people seeing the thrusters, that last one, they're like, shit.
That was going to get away with one. Damn.
Yeah. And I'm also proud of myself because with the 3-week, I have had a very hard time predicting what was going to show up. When it was 5, usually after the first 2, I could get pretty damn close.
Yeah.
I picked 2 out of the 3 movements in week 2 and all 3 in week 3.
There you go.
Format was a little bit different, but I was pretty damn close on my predictions, and I think we did a pretty good job preparing our members for it this year. Obviously, the twist in the first one with the consecutive dumbbell snatches per arm, that was a twist that I did not prepare for, and we weren't up to sets of 50 for double unders for most people. We did a little bit less than that, but I think we did a pretty good job prepping our athletes, if I do say so myself. And obviously you had the Open prep supplements and the performance supplements for a couple of our members. So I think our athletes showed up to play for sure.
Oh yeah. And then it makes me excited for next year too, because now my brain's like already thinking, okay, what can we do next year to
Write it down.
That?
Write it down.
Oh yeah. I already have some ideas.
Good. Cool.
Maybe some add-ons for next year. We were talking about that. Like, some side games besides just the Open workouts.
Ooh.
Let's throw in some fun stuff in there. Why not? Make it fun.
Yeah, make a bigger spectacle out of the Intramural Open. That'll be fun, and hopefully we're in a new spot by then.
Yeah, so that'll make that
If all
interesting.
goes well.
That'll make it interesting too.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we are done with the Open, and it's on to Murph Prep now.
Oh boy.
I'm giving people a week off from pull-ups.
Yeah.
Push-ups and squats and running, not so much.
Yeah. Heal your hands while you still can.
Yeah. And then next week, we're back to the bar.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate you coming on and chatting. Skol. We'll see everybody in the gym.